G'day, freedom lovers. It's Friday night and I'm back for another episode. So, how is everybody today? I see we've got a few people sitting here in the chat ready to rock or ready to go. I am going to do my best to keep a little bit more on top of the Rumble scenario. Big shout out to the fact checkers, says M. Mick Triple R Rumble. Yeah, got to give them a big shout out wherever we can. Not much happening over this side of the fence. And in comes our g'day, Mark James. How are you, mate? G'day, Pam. Got a couple of people popping in straight away. Always good to see people are there. How are you, Pam? So as we get going, Vapu, how are you? I think it's important. G'day, Daniel. Rex, how are we? And g'day. So we've got a few people here ready to rock, ready to rumble. So our guest today is Stephen Nowakowski, an environmentalist who has seen the devastation of what's happening with these wind farms. And before we kick off, I think it's important to sort of go back in time in case you didn't take my advice on the last show and go and have a look at the last video. I've shortened it up really quickly just to give you a little bit of an idea of sort of where I first met Stephen and what was going on. And I must say, it was a very interesting experience. I didn't know what to expect. I knew we were going into a wind farm sort of situation, but I also knew we were dealing with people who would be considered the right-wing thing or left-wing thing, sorry. And I'm generally considered the right-wing thing. Is there going to be a clash of personalities here? What's going to happen? But I was pleasantly surprised to see that everybody just got along because we're all there for the greater good of mankind. But this is a little snippet of what happened.
The impacts of renewable energy to our vast landscapes of northern Australia. In this case, it's Chulumban wind farm. It's only a proposal, so it hasn't gone through yet. But then we have Mount Fox, and we have then Upper Burdekin.
So what I've just done is give a presentation where I was comparing wind power, everything from its safety to the area it takes up, its reliability.
Vast landscapes of northern Australia that is being threatened to be industrialised for wind and solar farms.
It's been a bit of a journey for me, uncovering the rollout of renewables. So there's a big push for renewables. They're going they're going into places that we never thought they'd go. The renewable industry is an unregulated industry, and at the moment it's a free-for-all. So big renewables are coming in and just doing the bare minimum of what they need to do. All they need to do legally is notify the adjacent landowners that adjoin the site. No one else needs to know.
Bearing of the ground to massive erosion, the protection of wildlife.
We're talking about koalas after blasting.
At the Upper Burdekin site, there's a huge swathe of amazing animals that are vulnerable, endangered or threatened, such as the Sharman's rock wallaby, masked owl. Chulumban, there's the magnificent brood frog, the red goshawk, the greater glider.
This is of global significance, so we're looking at over 2,000 species at least.
The thing is, we only focus on the vulnerable species. There's a whole suite of everyday animals that are found there as well that need that functioning ecosystem.
When you put it here, you're putting it right beside maybe the greatest proliferation of bird life in the world. There's not a lot of jungle left in the world. And this happens to be one of the places where there is jungle left. And you're putting it right on the side of the jungle.
And once you start fragmenting all these spots one after the other, well, then they do become vulnerable.
Wow. So there we were. That was a year ago. Things have changed quite a bit. A lot of things have happened. G'day, Rex, wind farms, fishermen standing up. There's lots going on with this situation, I can tell you. With kill the environment to save the environment. It certainly seems that way when you see those bulldozers wrecking through, eh? Why would our battery fire vehicles on charge at the moment? That's a very interesting concept unto itself, isn't it? G'day, Tim. Wow, we've got lots of people. There's going to be a lot of comments. We're going to try and best to keep up with things as best as we can. And I definitely want to have a look at our friends over here on Rumble. We've got an Eve saying good evening, and Kerwant, hi from Darwin. Darwin is a great place. I got this T-shirt there. You know, this is my environmentalist T-shirt, in case you were wondering. G'day from the Gold Coast, says John. And hello from the mountains of SD from Cool Frog. I'm not sure exactly where SD is. I always struggle with the letter games and whatnot. Man, you've aged so much in the last year. Thanks, Mark. You know, I thought it was just the excessive sun that I've gotten in the last week. You know, like, wow, I've browned up so much in the last 2 weeks of getting out there truck driving. It's really full on, It's, yeah. But anyway, before I get sidetracked and start talking about my lovely skin complexion and the tan I'm acquiring at the moment, I think it's time we introduce our guest here, Stephen. How are you, Stephen?
Yeah, good, Mark. Yes, yeah, very good this evening. Yeah, just our cyclone approaching North Queensland, so yeah, gearing up for that, I suppose. We're doing a bit of housekeeping tomorrow, and yeah, get ready for the cyclone.
Yeah, same, man. We got to pull all the dodgy stuff you've left lying around in the yard out of the road and clean up all the bits and pieces so they don't go through no windows and whatnot. It's it's a pretty daunting thing, you know, particularly for those who are, you know, obviously not from North Queensland. We do have a massive cyclone brewing out in the ocean, somewhere like 1,000 odd kilometers out. I think it was somewhere in the northeastern vicinity of Cairns at the moment. It could go anywhere. It could fizz out. It could get bigger. We just don't know. That's the thing about cyclones. We just have no idea. So, we're just going to have to sort of plow through and hope for the best. But Stephen, I reckon it might be a good place to start for people to sort of get to know you a little bit. You know, maybe give you a bit of your history into your love of the environment, and sort of segue into what led you into sort of opposing what would generally be considered the environmental desire to push these renewable technologies.
That's right. Yeah. So, you know, for the last 30 years, the last 3 decades, I've been a strong advocate for conservation, environment, been very involved with conservation groups such as the Australian Conservation Foundation, the Wilderness Society, in the Cairns and Far North Environment Centre. And I was on the board of the Cairns and Far North Environment Centre for a number of years. And I was even the editor of their magazine, Ecotone, for about 10 years. So very involved with the conservation movement, been very involved with the Port Hinchinbrook campaign. You may know of that back from the late 90s, early 2000s in Cardwell. Very involved with the land clearing campaign through Queensland, Wild Rivers for Cape York, and very involved in the False Cape campaign here in Cairns. It was the that's the beautiful headland on the other side of Trinity Inlet opposite Cairns, and that was earmarked to be developed into condos and hundreds of units over that headland. So very involved with that. So I'm a bit of an activist, you know, so I don't mind getting onto the front line and blockading and chaining myself to trees if that's what needs to be done. And I've done that a few times. And I've even been involved in the Australian Greens Party. And it's something that I've had to really struggle with recently in terms of a lot of their policies and the direction that the Australian Greens are taking. So I've got a history of environmental activism, political activism, and
well, let's touch on what you were just saying there. That you're at odds with what the Greens are doing, and you know, for myself, like I've always, in the inception of the Greens, I thought what they were doing was a good thing, saving the environment, saving the whales, you know, making sure forests aren't getting cleared, making sure we got, you know, a wonderful environment for us all to enjoy, you know. But somewhere along the line, something happened, something went weird, and they seem to be more concerned with politics as opposed to actually caring for the environment, which was, in my opinion, what they that was what they were supposed to be doing. And now that we can see the damage that's sort of being brought forth by the renewable construct, in the sense that, I mean, let's face it, these things have a lifespan. So what's renewable about that? There's a lot of mining going into it. It seems like we're going to strip mine the earth for renewables that aren't renewable and all these sorts of other things. That's where I lost my sort of faith with what the Greens were pushing. How is it for you?
Well, it's that, but it's also a lot of other issues which I won't touch on tonight. But it's the energy issue that's I've really struggled with. And just, for example, even just the gas policy of the Australian Greens. And if you know renewables need gas. You need gas for renewables because you need something to back it up. And if you are to transition, the way to do that is with gas. Yet you've got Adam Bandt saying that we need to shut down gas, stop gas. I'm a firm believer that coal seam gas is bad gas, and we shouldn't really be going forward with or opening up any new coal seam gas. But if we're serious about if the Greens are serious about a transition, well, gas is a part of the transition. And so for Adam Bandt to say shut down gas, well, that means there can't be a transition. So there has to be some sort of compromise there. And I know that there's a lot of gas in the Timor Strait, for example. So if we are to open up new gas wells, well, I think we should really be encouraging good gas exploration and exploitation, such as in the Timor Strait, where we can benefit the East Timorese, the most impoverished people on earth, and do it properly. Yeah, so I just think Adam Bandt, instead of just saying no to gas, well then you just can't say no to gas. We need gas. Well, they need gas for the transition. And if we can actually do a good transition, they can do a good transition with gas if we do it right, and actually help our neighbours to the north. And there's really clever ways of trying to achieve this transition that they're after, but it's just no. 100% renewables. 100% renewables just can never, ever work. And no country on earth has ever achieved it. Germany has tried to do it and has spent $1.1 trillion and have only reduced emissions by 3%.
And they seem to be really hurting as a result of trying to do that too, to the point where they're lacking in reliable power, and in a country that, freezes during winter, that's been quite devastating for the populace because they're unable to heat their homes.
Well, that's right. So Germany has spent a tremendous amount of money and haven't achieved the emissions that they hope to achieve in reductions. And they've had to go and open up coal-fired power stations to get them through winter. And meanwhile, the electricity is now so expensive, so unreliable, that manufacturing in Germany is going to Vietnam or China, where electricity is cheaper, and using their coal-fired power stations, and emissions are going up in other countries. So the emissions aren't going down. It's just that manufacturing is going to other countries where it is unregulated, and there's coal power plants supplying cheap, reliable electricity. So that 3% of emission drops in Germany really is just the transfer of manufacturing over to other countries, really.
Especially when you look at, I think last I seen the figures, you were somewhere in about 2,500 coal-fired power plants in China, and they're planning another 700 to 800 to be built.
That's right.
While, particularly in Australia, we're shutting down the only 6 that we have. It seems to be somewhat futile. Obviously, the cost to manufacture these technologies, if you're looking at it from the carbon point of view, seems to be completely the opposite of what they're selling us.
Well, that's right. The emissions from renewables, the data isn't in on that. Those the data is actually coming from the manufacturers of the wind farms like Vestas, which is majority owned by BlackRock, mind you. So those emissions are being modelled on a Scandinavian country where there's no forest clearing and shipping of the components is localised. You have to remember too, with wind turbines, the efficiency drops off over the 20 years, only lasts 20 years. The centre nacelle gearboxes, the centre gearboxes are 400 tonne of steel. That's a big gearbox, and that wears out over 20 years. And the efficiency of that drops away by a few percentage points every year. So the first year of operation of a wind turbine, it may run at 100% efficiency. But it's just like a solar panel. The efficiency drops away over the lifespan of the solar panel or the wind farm. So when that happens, the emissions actually increase over time. And the reason why I'm at this point with regards to renewables is because I documented the construction of the Mount Emerald wind farm just west of Cairns here back in 2017. And that was the first industrial wind farm to be built in Queensland. And the project proponents, the developers and the politicians were saying at the time, well, this wind farm will provide power to 70,000 homes. And we all thought from the conservation sector, well, that's the price we need to pay. We need to build Mount Emerald wind farm because that will provide power to 70,000 homes. And that Mount Emerald area is a beautiful plateau with one of the best populations of northern quolls, 5 endangered plant species. But we were happy to sacrifice that area because it was going to provide power to 70,000 homes, and that's what we need to do to decarbonise. And this was my way of thinking back then in 2017. And so it got built, and I photographed it. So I was employed by Ratch, the Thai company, multinational company that built it. And I documented some of the construction of that wind farm. And then it was built. And then I thought, well, I'll go and look at the data of what the capacity factor is for that wind farm. How much electricity does it actually generate? So I pulled all the data out of the NEM, the National Electricity Market website. It's all freely available. You pull the data out, and electricity is sold in 5-minute blocks. Every 5-minute interval, electricity is sold into the National Electricity Market. So I pulled all that data out, put it into Excel, analysed it, and it soon discovered that wind farm only operated at 18.1% capacity factor for the entire year of 2022. So for 12 months, it only ran at 18.1% median output. So it really only supplied power to roughly 9,000 homes. Yeah.
So they're claiming it has the capacity to do 70,000, but in reality, it had 9.
No, that's right. So if it runs at 100% full time, it can provide power to 70,000 homes.
That is an interesting manipulation of information.
That's right. So when you hear in the media, and we hear this all the time, you see it every single day in the media, because there's new wind farms being proposed in Queensland every week. So every week there's a new wind farm. And there's actually 95 in the pipeline in Queensland right now, right down the Great Dividing Range. So a 2,000 kilometre linear length down the coast. And I've got a map here that I'll show you later.
Yep.
And you hear from politicians and project proponents.
Well, actually, it's probably not a bad idea to bring that map up now, particularly for some people who are not as familiar with the Queensland coast as we are. Like, I mean, I come across quite a lot of people, particularly, those who live in, sort of Melbourne and Victoria, are like, oh yeah, no worries, I'm in Brisbane. I'll meet you down the road in a couple of hours. That'll be a day and a half drive. Townsville's quite a hike, same as Cairns. Like it's the distance between like Cairns and Brisbane is equivalent to Melbourne and Brisbane. So sometimes people don't quite realise just how big that this coast of Queensland is.
That's right. Yeah, so it's this map here. Can you share that? It says final map. It's the.
Did you share that the same way that you did?
Yeah, it's shared. I've shared it in the chat room.
Oh, did you drop it into the comments?
Yeah. Oh, no, it's here. It's in the studio.
Oh, is it this one?
That's it. Yeah.
Yeah, beauty.
So I just generated that today. This has been a work in progress. It's not the whole state of Queensland. That's on another map, and I didn't get a chance to upload that. But
so what are we looking at here for those who are probably just seeing lines and dots and whatnot?
That's right. Yeah. So what we're seeing here is a section of the Queensland coastline. Blue is water, and the light green is land. And
is that around the Rockhampton region?
That's right. So it's a map it's a map showing the area between Rockhampton and Gladstone.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's probably Gladstone to Rockhampton.
Which is what, about 200-300 kilometres of coast?
Probably about 300 kilometres. That's 300 kilometres of coastline. So what we can see there is the Lotus Creek wind farm, the Clark Creek wind farm, Boomer Range, Moonlight Range. Those red polygon areas are the property extents of wind farms that I don't know where the haulage roads are, but the black dots indicate where the turbines are going.
Right.
So all the red lines are all the haulage roads to get the big components of the wind farm into the location to be erected.
Mm-hmm.
So all the red lines are haulage roads. The black dots are the turbine locations. The yellow polygons are the proposed solar farms. The red polygons, like I just said, are subject areas where there's wind farms going in there, but I don't know where the haulage roads are going. They haven't actually been mapped yet. So I haven't been able to digitize those in, but those black dots are indicative of where the turbines are going. To give you a sense of scale, that Smoky Creek solar farm is around 2,000 hectares. And that Calliope solar farm, the yellow polygon, that's around 2,500 hectares. So those two solar farms combined is 4,500 hectares in size, which is around 11,000 acres of land.
That's
more than that, about 15,000 acres of land, just for those two solar farms.
A lot of the townships aren't even that big.
No, well, those wind farms are bigger than the city of Gladstone. They're massive, and these wind turbines are 275 metres high, and they're all on top of the ridgeline. So there's no wind in Queensland. We're not a windy state. We
are now at the moment. I mean, and just to give people a bit of an idea too, there's a couple of things here that'll actually kind of possibly go against what we're trying to say, but in this rare circumstance, and I'll start with why. So I'm going to present my screen here because I'm going to bring up windy, which will give everybody a bit of an idea of what's going on here. So particularly those in the southern coast, this is the current cyclone map at the moment. Like Windy is a great app. I actually got told about this from a fellow who's he does boats and whatnot, so he needs to know where the wind's coming, and you can see this massive tropical cyclone, and you just look at the size of that is almost pretty much, I mean, there's Cairns and Townsville. This massive storm will encompass both those regions should it come straight this way.
Yeah.
So, we're both puckering up for some really nasty weather. But as a result, as you look around, you can see there's a hell of a lot of wind smashing in at the coast.
Yeah, it's coming
which
in
brings
now.
us to the live map. Anybody who wants to have a look at it anytime you like, there's the website. This is the live map that shows you what wind farms are doing. This is a rare occasion because I look at this thing all the time just to give myself a bit of a chuckle, to see how well they're going. And in this particular instance, that the a few that are in Queensland at the moment are generating 60% plus capacity.
Yeah, I've never seen that. Yeah, I've never seen those 3 over 60%. They're usually they're usually a green icon, which is less than 30%.
Yeah, exactly.
Amazing.
So, and that's because of this.
Yeah.
And obviously that's also smashing out down here, and we can look around, we can see there's a lot of wind happening at the moment as a result of there's even a small cyclonic system happening out here, and this is a really great way to really get the weather. All those years of watching the Weather Channel and their little spiky things flying in all over the place made no bloody sense to me, but when I watch this, I can see exactly what's happening. It makes perfect sense. And as a result, we've actually got some activity happening for a change.
Yeah, that's amazing. The wind farms are actually generating some electricity.
Yeah, funny. But only here, where there's bugger all of them, But like I said, this might go against us because, we need more wind farms now. But the problem is when that cyclone comes through, it's probably going to tear them down, rip them to pieces, and we know once they reach maximum capacity, they hit this not utilized fashion because they put the brakes on.
Yeah.
Because otherwise they'll catch fire and all sorts of other nasty things. But again, as we, I hit a button there and everything just went, there we go. So as we look at, they're generally in the green colors.
That's right. Yeah.
Which gives you that 18% sort of
average
look that you were talking about. Average. Yeah. So, this is a great map for anybody who wants to, talk about these things with people and go, okay, cool. Let's see what they're actually doing. And 9 times out of 10, I mean, even this with high winds, we can still see there's a lot not being utilized. There's a lot of them are generally at 30% and below. Very rare to see red ones. Very, very rare.
Yes. So
I just thought that was a little bit on the relevant side. We'll come back to your map here, mate.
Yeah. So these are all proposed wind farms, and at the moment, the Clark Creek wind farm up in the top left is under construction. That's being cleared right now, and that's Squadron Energy. That's Twiggy Forest, and he's in there with bulldozers right now clearing the Clark Creek wind farm on top of the ranges. And that's around 1,500 hectares of koala habitat. And that's being cleared. Now, this is the reason...
Now, weren't they also going around bashing koalas on the skull to euthanize them in these particular instances?
Well, that's right. So in the EIS report, in the ecology report, for Clark Creek and Lotus Creek, if a koala or a mammal is injured in the land clearing operations, they need to be euthanized on the spot with a blunt force instrument to the back of the head. So if there's a koala that's been injured, they need to kill it there and then with a smack to the head.
So that's madness. Like generally, when I go to wildlife sanctuaries, they have all these contact numbers. Please call if you find an injured animal. Here they are purposely destroying their habitats and just go, oh, well, we won't bother calling that number. We'll just knock them on the head. There's this is madness.
Yeah. So going back to that Clark Creek wind farm. So this is how the industry works. That is a 1 billion, that one there's a 2 billion because it's in 2 stages, stage 1 and 2. That's a $2 billion project. Now, normally a bank won't finance such a project because the energy generation and the income is up to the whim of the weather. It's very unpredictable. So what happens is that the federal government issues certificates and issues those certificates at $54 a megawatt hour to the wind farm. And the wind farm sell those certificates to polluters, so those polluters can offset their emissions. So Anglo-American Coal have signed a contract to buy the certificates off the Clark Creek wind farm to offset their scope 2 carbon emissions from their coal mine in central Queensland, so they can operate carbon neutrally. This is how bizarre the industry is.
So they're not actually operating in a carbon neutral construct. They're wheeling and dealing in tickets and
in offsets. It's all about offsets. So the wind farms don't make money from generating meaningful electricity to go into the grid. It's all about generating energy to sell as certificates to big polluters under the large generator capacity scheme, the RETS and renewable energy scheme. So
this is a lot like bank bonds, basically.
That's right. So what it does, it gives the wind farm companies the security that they're going to make money regardless, and then they can go to a bank and the bank will then finance the construction. So, for example, the Caban wind farm that's just been finished and is now being commissioned. BP.
So just to keep that simple for the average person who might have been a bit overwhelmed with the complexity of bonds and all that sort of stuff. Fundamentally, a bank wouldn't fund this if their life depended on it, unless there was some sort of security. So and these bonds are acting as a security. Correct. Otherwise, there would be no funding, and the whole industry would collapse.
Correct. You take away the bonds, which are called certificates, you take those away out of the system, the entire industry falls over. Yeah.
Here's an interesting question. Is it true wind turbines kill countless bats and birds? It takes more energy to build a wind turbine than it could ever generate. The blades of wind turbines consist of toxic waste once they reach the end of their life. That's a mouthful of questions. What are your thoughts on that, mate?
Yeah, so wind turbines do kill countless bats and birds. And the problem in Australia is that we don't have the data for wind farms in an Australian context in our Australian bushland. A lot of the data is coming out of Scandinavia and Europe, where there are a lot of wind farms. But in an Australian context, we don't know, because they're being built so fast and so rapidly. We don't know what the impact is on raptors and so forth. The other issue is that with the wind farms, when they get ecologists on site to monitor bird and bat deaths, that data is copyrighted and owned by the proponent. We can't access that unless we do a freedom of information and try to find what the deaths are.
Are they a private company, though?
That's right.
So if they're a private company, they don't have to conform with the freedom of information request because they're a private company.
No, but they do need to lodge that data with the Federal Environment Minister for the first 5 years of the operation of the wind farm. So you have to do FOIs to get that data with the Federal Environment Minister. Now, Mount Emerald Wind Farm's only been operating now for 5 years. So we do have that data there. We know that there's a tremendous amount of bats. It's particularly micro bats that are getting hammered. The other issue is what we've seen with the Caban wind farm that has just been built, is that there's lights on top of the turbines at night, and that will attract insects and bats, and we don't know how that's going to impact on bats, because they'll be attracted to the insects around the turbines at night because they're lit up for aviation purposes. So we don't know.
There is no way to tell these sorts of things, and it's sad that it's being rushed through so quickly too, without any studies being done. I mean, and even you know, we've already hit on the construction process itself is killing animals. You know, I mean, in the intro video, we went through a whole list of videos that are of animals who are going to be endangered because of the actual process of creating the thing in the first place, and then the aftermath. And I know in America that they've got a big issue with hawks and eagles and things like that getting smashed by these things as well. Then there's the concept that they catch fire. I mean, heaven forbid, like this is the Great Dividing Range, all this massive, beautiful land there, forest land and all that. What happens if one of these things catch fire?
Yeah, well, that's a really big concern for the residents just west of Rockhampton. I did a recent road trip down the Great Dividing Range a couple of months ago and ground truthed a lot of these sites. So I went to the Lotus Creek Wind Farm, the Clark Creek Wind Farm, Boomer Range. It meant walking vast distances through the forest to get onto the site. And I photographed the site, videoed the site, camped on the site to try to get an understanding of what those sites are like. And Moa Creek, Moonlight Range, Boulder Creek, I flew over those in a helicopter. The Mount Hopeful Wind Farm is a shocker. That's on really beautiful high escarpment country. And the ecology reports there, they found yellow-bellied gliders and northern quolls on that site. But bushfires, going back to bushfires, is a big issue because the residents of Rockhampton are surrounded by these mountain ranges and they have fires every so many years, and they use aerial firefighting bombers to help with the firefighting. And they're really concerned about these turbines, hundreds and hundreds of turbines going in through the forest where they can't get in and combat some of these fires with water bombers.
Right. The turbines themselves are creating a hazard to firefighting efforts.
That's right. Yeah. So they're creating a hazard to firefighting hazards.
Wow.
They can't fight fires effectively when you've got 275-meter towers right along the ridgeline. And then, like you mentioned before, there are many, many examples of turbines just catching fire. And even here in North Queensland, the Windy Hill Wind Farm. The Windy Hill Wind Farm at Ravenshoe, that was built 25 years ago. That's now at the end of its life. And 2 of those turbines have already caught fire. They've ignited and caught alight. Yeah.
Obviously, they didn't start a massive bushfire. I guess we dodged a bullet there because, I mean, bushfire is pretty common. I mean, right now, I don't know what it's like in Cairns. It's probably a bit greener than it is here in Townsville. But, right now it's Brownsville. It won't take much to get this place to go up. It's a tinderbox. I mean, a bit of cyclonic weather is probably not too bad for us, so long as it doesn't tear the hell out of everything. We could use some of that cyclonic rain, But and working in the news, I've seen these fires. They start quick, they spread fast. I've got a friend who's a firefighter, and and that's the other element of this green technology is the EV cars, those batteries, they catch fire. And one of the solutions to this scenario is when you've got heaps of sun and you've got heaps of wind, where do we put the energy? We're going to store it in batteries. So they want to build massive battery banks. Now, already a Bunnings got caught fire and the whole thing was burnt to the ground because of a couple of power tool batteries. Imagine what happens when we've got a massive battery bank built somewhere and it starts catching, because those lithium-ion batteries do not like to go out.
That's right. Yeah. So there was actually a battery that ignited at the Boulder Combe solar farm just recently. You'll see it on the map there. Yeah. So that happens. I just want to mention also that what we're seeing here is just a little section of Queensland. There's actually 95 projects like this right up the coastal ranges of Queensland.
Wow.
Just hypothetically,
I might zoom in to give people a little bit of an idea here. If I come back to adding this one into our stage here, so that region we're looking at is here. That's your Rockhampton region there.
Yes, that's
So
right. Yes.
that's pretty close to that map sort of look we're looking at. And
Yep,
now let's zoom out.
Yep.
You know, so this
Yep,
tiny little
right.
dot, basically where that hand is pretty
Yep.
much that dot on the map, and they want to smash them right up the coast.
Yeah,
Why?
that's right.
Because the Great Dividing Range is high up and all that sort of jazz, and it also goes along with the pre-built power lines, so they
That's
can
it.
tap into that grid quickly.
Yep. Yep.
So yeah, I mean, and
Yeah.
you can see what they've done in Victoria already. Like that's just madness, you know. They want to do that all the way up the coast. And anybody
right.
who's ever driven up this coast, it's such a beautiful drive.
Yep,
I absolutely love driving around these regions, you know, like, you know, becoming a truck driver again is actually kind of cool because I get to see a bit more of the countryside again. You know, it's really nice to sort of get out there and, you know, see it even if it's whipping past. But, you know, they just want to bulldozer and put these eyesores up. It's horrible.
Yep. So if you can imagine that state of Queensland with 95, there'll be 95 of those icons right down the range. Yep.
Yeah. And they're
Now,
massive blotches.
So
massive.
yeah, one more thing I want to say is that just hypothetically, if all these are built, the installed capacity of all these renewable energy projects will be around 10 to 12 gigawatt. Queensland consumes 10 gigawatt on a hot summer's day.
Yeah.
So if all this renewable is built, the nameplate capacity, the installed capacity, if it all ran at 100%, would deliver somewhere between 10 and 12 gigawatt. But it doesn't run at 100%. It only runs at 15 to 35% of capacity factor. Like I just mentioned to you before, Mount Emerald only ran at 18.1% median capacity factor for the entire year of 2022. For 63 days, cumulatively, it didn't generate any electricity. So what that means is those 95 projects will need to be tripled to try to supply that 10 gigawatt of electricity that we consume in Queensland. We need to overbuild by 3.
Wow.
And then when we start
But is 3 enough? You're talking about 18%. I mean, even if we were nice and we'll just round it off and say 20%, don't we need to be 5 times more?
By 5. That's right. So you're going to times it by 5. So you're going to times it by 5. And then if we start talking about increased electricity consumption for the electric vehicle fleet, Elon Musk is saying that we need to triple our electricity generation for electric vehicles. There's 1.49 vehicles on Earth right now. To convert all those over to electric, we need to triple global energy generation. And then we need to have redundancy. So if you need to have redundancy built in. And then if we start talking about hydrogen and generating hydrogen, we'll then double that. And if we start talking about Australia being a renewable energy superpower, triple that again. It's complete delusion. It can't be done. Yeah. It's complete delusion.
And that's with the country with a small population as well.
That's right.
Could you imagine, you know, what are we at, about 27 million now? Like, I mean, our population is, and it's growing with the amount of people they're bringing in, you know.
That's right. 700,000 people in 2 years.
Yeah, that's a lot. That is unsustainability into itself, you know. We can't look after what we've got. We haven't got the infrastructure. We've got so many problems right now. The last thing we need is
we've got families living in tents because they can't find a rental. I was listening to the radio today, a tragic story where you've got a paraplegic patient in the Gold Coast Hospital. She can't get out of hospital because she can't find a rental. Wow. So she's trying to stay in hospital for as long as she can, and I think you can stay in a public hospital for up to 36 days free, and then you've got to start charging. So she needs to stay in hospital for 36 days, and hopefully within that 36 days she'll be able to find a rental house to move into. So she's been given $150 a night under a government scheme to find a hotel room, and she can't even find a hotel room for less than $150 a night to move into. You know, and then we're bringing in 700,000 people, which is just exacerbating the issue.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
It's just
Anyway.
it's madness all around, eh?
I know.
But anyway, well, let's come back to the wind farm thing. So, where do we stand right now? Like, what can the average person do against this sort of thing? I mean, you've generally been a pretty active person in sort of pushing for these kind of things until you've had this awakening. I mean,
That's right. Yeah.
where do we go? I mean, in my mindset, I feel like the technology is being rushed and pushed through long before it actually has legs to stand on. You know, there might be something useful in the technology, you know, but I feel like it's underdeveloped, and they're trying to get a profit from it before it's functional.
I see it purely as political, because the last federal election, there was this, you know, big swing to the Greens and the Teals, and they wanted to see action on climate change. So basically, the government has stepped back and has let multinational companies just come in and cherry pick where they want to go, the cheapest locations, hard up against the existing transmission infrastructure, and have said, just go for it. And they've facilitated this by allowing the legislation to do that. So at local council level, their wind and solar farms are deemed as code accessible, not impact accessible. They go straight through council. They go straight through the state government as State Code 23, which is a code that allows the developers to proceed with an exemption from the Vegetation Management Act, the Nature Conservation Act, and the reef regulations. So it's basically a free-for-all where these wind farms can move in and have open slather and go hard and fast to appease the Teals and the Greens. And Chris Bowen has said we need we need a wind turbine erected every 10 hours up until the year 2032 to reach our targets. And as long as it's seen that those turbines are being erected, it doesn't matter if those turbines are in good wind resource areas. It doesn't matter if they're going into high biodiversity areas, highly cultural significant areas. It doesn't matter. As long as those turbines are going up, it is showing the Teals and the Greens in the cities that Labor's doing something for climate change, and they'll retain their seats. And I know that the State Labor Party are shit scared of losing seats in inner Brisbane at the next state election late next year, and they just need to show that they're doing something for climate change. And this is not helping climate change. Like I said, Germany has spent $1.1 trillion going down this path and has not reduced their emissions. We're just going down the wrong path. So I think the biggest thing we can do is programs like this and try to educate the public into reevaluating renewable energy and ask hard questions about renewable energy, and look at the data and look at the spatial footprint that's required for 100% renewables. And I think they'll quickly learn that it just physically can't be done. And we haven't even touched on things like the rare earth minerals that we need to facilitate this rollout. You know, the vast amounts of mining that needs to occur to build all this stuff. And Chris Bowen has also mentioned we need 28,000 kilometres of new transmission infrastructure to facilitate this rollout. So vast amounts of land is required.
And mining.
And people just don't understand the vastness of it all. And they don't understand that 49% of your electricity bill that you get every quarter is on transmission. You know, so 49% of your electricity bill is transmission costs. It's the poles and wires. And we need to build 28,000 kilometres of new poles and wires to facilitate this rollout. The net zero report that came out just recently, which was a great report, a very thorough report, and they have come out and said it's going to cost $1.1 trillion to facilitate this rollout up until 2032 or 2035, and then $7 to $9 trillion by 2050 to facilitate this rollout. And what's going to happen is people are going to they're going to see no reduction in power bills. Power prices can never, ever, ever, ever go down.
Yeah.
They can never go down when you've got intermittent, unreliable, spaced out, intermittent power generation sources being generated a long way from where power is being consumed using vast amounts of transmission infrastructure. Power prices can never go down. So I think at some point, consumers are going to go, I've been lied to. Renewable energy was supposed to reduce our power prices. You know, we've got Chris Bowen.
That's what they tell us.
And Chris Bowen is saying, "Oh, well, the sun is free and the wind is free," but that's got nothing.
You've got to harness it still.
You've got nothing to do it. You've got to capture this really intermittent resource and transport it vast distances to where it's being consumed. And then you need to overbuild the grid to try to capture the wind where it's blowing somewhere. It's just,
and you've got to store it, because I mean, what's currently happening, you know, and particularly, you know, in a place like Queensland, you know, right up here, you know, and you probably see it in Cairns as much as I see it here in Townsville. You drive around, and there's just nearly every house has got solar panels on it now. You know, like that's heaps. So we are generating a shitload of power during the day while we're all at work, not using it. That power is being fed back into the grid. Where does it go? It goes out to burner stations. So the big stations are literally pumping this energy back out into the atmosphere because they can't store it. There's nothing else to do.
That's right.
So that's extra infrastructure created to get rid of the excess power that we don't need when it's being generated. Everybody comes home 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock at night. The sun goes down. We all turn the TVs and the computers and shit on. There's no sun to power it. We just wasted our effort. You know, you know, I mean, we've all done it. You know, I mean, I've got them on my roof to subsidize that power. You know, I run my pool filter and my hot water systems and all that. And I've got timers and shit going around to try and utilize that to use it during the day. So it's actually worth its while, because the government gives you 2 fifths of nothing back for it, you know, while charging heaps to, you know, here we are nighttime, we've got lights and TVs and cameras and shit running all over the joint just so we can talk about this, you know. It makes no sense, and I don't see it ever getting to work, because obviously solar panels can only produce at that designated period. You know, wind can only produce at when the wind is blowing, you know, and it's all for this climate change. And I kind of want to sort of bring in something that I seen a long time ago, and this is just one of the many kinds of graphs we've seen over thousands and thousands, millions of years. Climate goes up and down. And I'm pretty sure it had nothing to do with my car or Elbow's jet setting all these years ago. So, and we know, we've heard of ice ages. We know the planetary poles have shifted and are currently in motion. So there seems to be a lot of factors that are not being considered while the carbon dioxide demon is being vilified. Not to mention, you know, I'm a bit of a spacey nerd, you know, and it seems to me that there's climate change happening on Mars and Pluto and Jupiter and all these planets. There seems to be a solar system cycle in amongst all this that might be bigger than just, you know, my petrol tank. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, look, my thoughts are that, look, I believe that we have influenced the climate. But my concern more so is the fact that it's because of land use change. You know, and the issue that I see is that we've cleared 70% of our continent. So therefore, we're going to get changes in weather variability, local changes. And you can't, you know, you go and clear big chunks of rainforest, of course, rainfall patterns are going to change and local climatic conditions are going to change. So land use change, I think, is a really big issue. And what my perspective is, all I want to see is trees left in the ground. I want to see forests left in the ground. We've cleared so much of this great continent already. We are where we are, but I think enough is enough. And what we need to start doing is healing our land and trying to reforest areas, particularly areas that are degraded, places that aren't being used. And we should really be tackling those issues of rewilding, reforesting, revegetating, getting our biodiversity back in order, bringing species back from extinction. And that's going to do more for climate action than anything else, if you believe in climate change. Yeah, so I want to see, my role in life is really just to try to stop species extinction. Biodiversity brings me such great pleasure in life, and it's, I don't want to see my children grow up in a world where we've lost spotted tail quolls and northern quolls and wedge-tailed eagles, and you know, and that's really being driven by land use change, by clearing forests. So that's what I think is the issue.
It seems to be that the renewables are doing more damage than anything that we've ever thought of before.
Renewables are doing nothing. It's just jobs and growth and business as usual. So now we've got coal, we've got gas, we've got oil, and now we've got renewables. It's just another industry.
Yeah,
it's just another industry.
There was another. I've got it tucked away somewhere, and I'll bring it out at some point when I can figure out where I put it. There is an amazing document I found. It's like a 1,000-page document that goes into what is required to create this, you know, electrical cars and solar panels and all that. And it basically stipulated that if we, you know, just on the cars alone, if we were to take every current petrol-driven car and convert it into an electrical vehicle, we would probably run out of resources before we got to about 15 to 20% of cars.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. There's not enough. There's not enough,
and that's
copper,
including the mining that hasn't been done.
Yeah. So there's not enough copper in Mother Earth to achieve 100% renewables. It just can't be done. And there's not enough rare earths and critical minerals in Mother Earth to do what the politicians are trying to make us do. Just for lithium, I don't know the data, but it's something like, you know, 250 tons of dirt needs to be moved to generate enough lithium just to go into one Tesla car.
Wow.
You know, and when you start thinking of 1.49 billion vehicles that need to be converted to electric, the mind boggles. It's just vast amounts of earth that needs to be turned over to capture the lithium, the rare earths, and so forth. Yeah.
And there's so many other elements that need to go into these things as well. You know,
yes.
just to get the concrete for the block.
So a wind turbine. Yeah, the foundation for a turbine, 1,200. Is it 1,200 ton? Sorry, no, it's 1,200 cubic meters of reinforced concrete in each foundation. The Clark Creek wind farm, there's 100 turbines. So just huge. With the wind farms, they actually have their own concrete batching plants on site. And so I filmed 12 cement mixer trucks on Clark Creek wind farm running 12 hours a day, non-stop from the concrete batching plant to the foundations for turbines. And they do that for weeks, if not months. Vast amounts. And all those carbon emissions really aren't captured in the spin by the developers. They say that there's only 7 grams of CO2 emitted per kilowatt hour from a wind farm, but that
And that's
doesn't
to do with
include
those credits they were creating as well.
but that doesn't include the clearing of the forest, the fly-in, fly-out workforce, all the mini township that's erected for the construction phase of these wind farms, and all that carbon that's burnt in the construction. And like I said, the wind farms diminish in their efficiency over 20 years. So after 20 years, they're not 100% efficient. They might only be 70% efficient. So it's just,
It's
just
madness.
crazy.
So what's this doing to the Greens movement? Because obviously, you would normally be sided with these people. Roll the clock back.
Right.
You guys are all friends and agreeing, and we need to do this. So is there a division happening within the ranks? Like,
it isn't happening
what's
yet.
happening there?
Yeah. So there's no division yet. The thing is, the green ideology, and I was in that ideology 4 years ago, where I really thought renewables were going to save, was going to save the planet and do this and that. And I was a firm believer in renewables. And the difference for me is that I've actually seen what's happening on the ground. And when you see what is happening on the ground, you go, this is unsustainable. This isn't climate action. And then when you start looking at the facts and the capacity factors and the spatial footprint and the scale, and that all of this stuff is made in China. So those wind turbines for Clark Creek, the CEO of Squadron Energy was on the radio the other day, 2GB in Sydney. And he was asked the question, where are all the components coming from? And the CEO said it's all coming in from China. So our whole electricity dependency is going to rely on cheap crap being made in China. There's no energy independence. We don't, we're going to throw all of our independence of energy security on the whims of the Communist Party of China to make the crap for us.
Yep.
It's just so.
And you see all the greenies just recently out there in plastic boats out in the harbour, I think somewhere in New South Wales, trying to block the coal from getting out. Well, it's like, how are they going to make your wind farms and solar panels if you block the coal?
I know. The coal needs to go to India and China to make the stuff, yes.
Yeah.
So the ideology for the Greens, they're just so stuck in their ideology that they see renewables.
They can't see the forest for the decimated trees.
No, and this is the thing that annoys me, because if they're really serious about climate change, they'd do what I just mentioned, which is try to keep trees in the ground and focus on revegetation, rewilding, bringing species back from extinction, and they're the real issues. And so my role, and that's a part of what I'm doing here tonight, is trying to get the word out there and trying to expose the on the ground issues of renewables and the massive amounts of civil earth moving and infrastructure that's required to create really scarce intermittent electricity, and then the overbuild required with that. And the Greens don't understand that. They just see beautiful wind turbines spinning in sheep paddocks in Scandinavia and think, well, we'll just make that happen here. And it can't happen.
Yeah.
It just can't happen. But if you want to show that video, because that video that I've just uploaded goes for 2 minutes, and that sort of articulates a lot of what I'm saying here.
All right, well, let's chuck this one up and we'll let the people have a bit of a look while we let our jaws rest for a moment.
Okay. Yeah, there's audio there. Have you got audio?
Oh, there it is. No, why is it? Technical difficulties, people. It's got a button there, but it's not letting me do it. Hang on a sec.
Oh, okay, maybe it's here.
Ah, yep, there it is. All right, let's roll that back then.
That's it, yep.
To this area here, so this is the proposed site for the Moa Creek wind farm, 10,500 hectare study area with a 654 hectare industrial footprint. There's 58 turbines proposed in this site, 76 kilometres of internal roads, and so there's a lot going to happen to these hills and people don't know. Wow. That's just absolutely mind-blowing, eh? Like, that's like a war zone. That's a freaking war zone.
Yeah. So you got to see
all these bombs going off. Like,
yeah, and that's renewable energy. That's industrial scaled renewable energy. And people say, oh, well, they're just wind turbines, and when they're finished after 20 years, you pull them down and revegetate the site. It's a quarry. You can't remediate the site. They are quarry sites.
yeah, and they've got to bury the turbines because they can't recycle them. So there's renewability out the window on that one as well.
Yeah,
You know, we still need oil and grease and things to make these things turn. So I'm still mystified though, because I know there's you and then there's Carolyn, and Carolyn was with Dennis up in Cairns the other day as well. You know, they did another video on awakening in health for anybody who wants to check that out. Definitely have a look. You know, and like I was saying at the beginning of this, you know, you would generally be considered your left kind of side of things. You know, people tend to try to push me into the right side of things. I prefer to think of myself as well-centered, but you know, I get pushed into this right-wing narrative. We've made strange bedfellows in this particular instance. And I know originally when we did the first video, there was you know, a few discussions with Carolyn about, you know, we didn't want to do this, we don't want to do that, but we're the ones helping you, you know, get this message out. So are you getting any sort of support from any of your former friends or still fellow friends, hopefully, that have come to the realization that what's happening is not right?
I think people are generally starting to wake up. The videos that I've been releasing and Rainforest Reserves have been producing are making a difference, and we're getting a lot of airtime on Sky News, for example.
Again, strange bedfellows.
I know, and I've had to really grapple with my ideology, but I just know that I'm on the right side of history on this. Because I know in 10, 20 years' time, people will look back at this and go, what the hell did you do? Why did you smash up all these mountains, short-lived, intermittent, Chinese-made renewable energy, when it didn't save the climate, or it doesn't do anything? It doesn't mitigate. It doesn't reduce emissions. It's all a scam.
Yeah.
And I know that I'll be on the right side of history on this. And I suppose that's what drives me. And I'm happy now. Like in the early days, I thought I had to be careful who I spoke to, so I wasn't perceived as being right-wing, or I could be shrugged off by the left, because I'm very well connected within the left, with the Australian Greens. I helped form the Australian Greens branch in North Queensland. But when I started really pushing this anti-renewable narrative publicly, I thought, okay, I'm going to lose friends over this. I'm going to start losing friends. They're going to say, this is all crap. You know, we need renewables. The climate's more important. I haven't lost one friend. I haven't lost anybody.
Oh, wow.
And
That's
in
good.
actual fact, I've been invited to do a lot of presentations, particularly within the Liberal National Party and the National Party in New South Wales. And I've recently been invited to do a presentation to sitting parliamentarians in Canberra in Parliament House in February next year. So I do a 1 hour presentation showing all the mapping and the spatial footprint of renewables. So I'm starting to get out there, and the message is starting to get out, and it's really because of the imagery. And I'm a firm believer that because I've been involved with environmental campaigns all my life, and I know that the arts plays a really big role in conservation outcomes. So things like videography, documentary making, photography, poetry, songwriting, it's the role of the arts that pull heartstrings. If you tell someone about the science behind wind farms, you know, there's going to be 38 turbines in this endangered ecosystem, blah, 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 people just skim over it. But you need to be able to pull heartstrings. The only way you can win a campaign, well, a campaign is multi-pronged. It's from the arts, it's from activism, it's from direct action, non-violent direct action, legal action. But the arts plays a really big role. And that's where I see my role and your role as well with what you're doing tonight, is actually getting the visual content out there. Because most people are happy to sit behind a TV screen or a computer screen and watch something, but they're not going to read a science document about the impacts of a wind farm on species and biodiversity. So I think that's been our greatest impact so far, and we just need to get that visual content out there to a broader base. The issue we're having is that the media won't touch anything to do with renewables. So the ABC, the Guardian, a lot of those conventional news agents, media platforms won't touch anything that could be perceived as being anti-renewable. So back in the early days, I had a good run with the ABC and the Guardian. But now that we're really ramping up against renewables, I think they see this as a bit of a threat, and they see renewables as saving the climate and the world, and they don't want to expose anything that's negative against renewables.
Do you think there's perhaps a funding scenario in there? Because, I mean, having worked for the mainstream, I've certainly seen them compromise facts and morality and things like that for the advertising dollar. You know, to give you an example, you know, they loved ragging on Clive Palmer, you know, because of what happened in Townsville. They thought he was a nice, easy target and all that. But when he started running politics, and whilst I was working with Win TV at the time, it was owned by Channel 10. Clive was spending a lot of money at Channel 9 and Channel 7. And once upon a time, the sales reps come in and ask the reporters, could you please be a little bit nicer to Clive? He's spending a lot of money at the other networks. Maybe if we're a bit nicer to him, we might be able to convince some of those dollars to come our way, because that's what's going to pay your roles, you know. And, I think the exact words of the reporter at the time was, I feel dirty, but I guess I have to do it. Yeah, and I think with the ABC, for example, I just think they're stuck in this ideology. I think it's more ideologically driven. Well, they're on the tax dollars, so
the tax dollars, and what they saw at the last federal election is this big climate push. They saw the Teals get in, a big push to the Greens, and I think they're just towing party line and going with that narrative that this is what the population of Australia wants. They want renewables, so don't question renewables.
Am I correct in assuming you're kind of saying that it's a system of belief, because you've kind of woken up, you've seen the truth, you've seen what's happening, but these people are still going down this line to the point where even when you're showing them the evidence, they're denying it. That seems to be almost cultish. almost like it is a belief system, as a science is supposed to be an ever-changing, ever-evolving. Science is never set. It's always supposed to keep growing and getting smarter and better and analyzing fact and go, oh, well, once upon a time we thought this was right, but we've realized the error of our ways, and now we're moving on and, evolving. But that doesn't seem to be the case here.
No, well, I'm not. Yeah, that's right. It's so ideologically driven. So, for example, I've got friends who are, I show them all the evidence. They understand the evidence, but they just really can't go to that next level and say that, okay, I now understand that it could be considered as a scam,
or it's conflict error in the
or
coding.
It can't, or not even a scam, but just the physics.
Not a scam, it's like, I look at it as like a coding scenario. Like, in computer programming, you run one line of code and something conflicts that line of code, the program shuts down. And to me, that's sort of a psychological scenario I've seen with a lot of people, where they've got this strong held belief, and when another line of code comes in that conflicts that sort of belief, it kind of starts creating a bit of a battle. In a computer realm, the computer would shut down. The human mind does this very similar kind of thing, but it seems to defend the value that was assigned in the mind before. And the new value that's creating a conflict is sort of resisted. A little wall goes up and little armies come out and start fighting it, kind of like an antibody, in a sense.
Yeah, and that's exactly right. And I think with my hardcore green friends, they're scared of acknowledging that renewables won't work because then they've got to side with Peter Dutton and Barnaby Joyce and the right.
Do you think it's that cut and dry that they're afraid of the insult?
I think they're really worried about being aligned with this what they've considered for all of their life being the enemy, and all of a sudden their enemy is actually right, and the conservative side of politics is right on this. And they're saying that this is physically can't be achieved. They're completely right. The nuts and bolts of this transition, the physics, the copper lines in the network just cannot cope. You can't physically build this. And so the coalition have got it right. They understand that it physically can't be built. If you do build it, it can be built, but it's going to cost $7 to $9 trillion.
Yeah.
So it can be done, and it's going to decimate people's livelihoods and farms, national parks and state forests with transmission infrastructure and substations, and dig up huge amounts of mines and rare earths to make it all. But I just don't know. I don't get it. Just don't. Why? I don't know what. I've done it.
You say you haven't lost any of these friends. You haven't lost any of these friends, and you're still able to communicate with them, and you're getting this conflict error, so to speak, in that computing sort of a realm. I'm with you on that. I don't understand how that works, because they're afraid that the system will turn on them, but they haven't turned on you.
That's right. So, for example, I sent out an email to 100 colleagues today with that latest map that I just showed you earlier, that Rockhampton to Gladstone, stating that this is only going to generate 10 to 12 gigawatt. We need to times this by 3. You mentioned 5. We need to times this by 5.
Well, that's what the maths is telling me.
Double it for redundancy, double it or triple it for electric vehicle fleet, double or triple it for hydrogen. And then to become a superpower. And to me, that's complete delusion. And I've had a few emails come back from Rusted on Green saying, great work, stick with it. They're encouraging me to keep going and fighting this fight.
But they're not going to put their heads on the chopping
block. They're not going to come into the trenches and help. No.
So this
No.
reminds me of what so I was talking to Senator Malcolm Roberts, I don't know, probably about 6 months
Yeah.
ago, and I asked him, like, seriously, do these people want to destroy the world? Does Labor want crime, for example? Because we can see the crime's just going mad. Are they going out of their ways to do this? He's gone, or are they really that stupid? And he's gone, yeah, they really are that stupid, actually. And if they're not that, they're bloody cowards. Because behind closed doors, just like what you're saying,
Yeah.
there are people in the particularly the Labor Party, who are quietly patting him on the back, and saying, "You're doing a great job, but I don't want to lose mine.
Yeah.
Keep doing what you're doing." It's just,
Yeah, that's right.
wow.
So I think, I don't know. I never thought I'd be in this position in my entire life, where I've stood side by side with conservationists. I've been arrested 3 times tying myself to trees to stop forests from being cleared for frivolous developments. And yet
Here it is happening in a different frivolous development.
I know, and I'm going to go and blockade the bloody Lotus Creek wind farm, which is the best koala hotspot left in Queensland.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to do it again and probably get arrested again, but for renewable energy. And you go, I never ever thought I'd be in this situation in my entire life. And I've been able to jump the divide and go and look at the facts and go, this is completely unsustainable. It cannot work. It's delusional.
Yeah.
On so many levels, from environmental grounds, right through to the cost of living pressures, to the physics, the physicality of building the stuff. It's completely impossible. And I've gone over and I've acknowledged that I was wrong. I marched the streets once for climate action back in the early mid-2000 or 2010 or 11 or something. I now regret doing that because I didn't do the research that I should have done. I should have researched the fact that to try to achieve what they want to do, which is 100% renewables, cannot be done. And if I educated myself 10 years ago, I would have been a lot wiser earlier. So look, I was a part of the problem. The reason why the government has taken this 100% renewable trajectory is because of people like me, because I was naive and I didn't research and look at the facts and look at the data and look at what Germany's doing in other countries and how it's failing in other parts of the world. But now I do. And
that's amazing, and I want to thank you for stating it in that way, like to be so bold and proud to admit that you're wrong. You were wrong, sort of thing. I mean, I was similar in the same thing. I used to really sort of think the Labor Party was the way. I used to think the idea of saving the world. I mean, and in a lot of ways, we were trained to think that way. I remember going right back to primary school, being told, "Oh, we're going to run out of oil, running out of coal. We need to do this. We need to do this." For the last 40 odd years, we've been programming the human race to think this way. So any wonder we're having those kind of conflict issues, because it's not just I read it in the newspaper last year. This is from our childhood. We have been taught to think this way. So we're talking some very deep coding, in the human mind and the human psyche that needs to be sort of addressed. And I think you've done a great job to break that coding apart and accept reality. It's an amazing feat, man. Yeah. So well done.
Well, thank you. So it's really about seeing what's happening on the ground, and I think we just need to show a wider community what's involved in this 100% renewable transition, because like I just said, it's completely unachievable. It can't be done. And in actual fact, it's going to make, if you believe in climate change, it's actually going to make the climate worse.
So I believe in climate change. I think there's just a lot of other factors. I think that the fact that they've just honed in on this one element, which, as we understand, is a very small element within the atmosphere. I mean, I learned from watching Astro Boy when I was a kid that the majority of the atmosphere is nitrogen. You know, carbon dioxide doesn't seem to be that much of a thing. We exhale that, you know, and then the plants take that and turn it into oxygen. Again, basic things we learned in primary school. If they had said carbon monoxide, or another toxic gas that comes out of the fuel tank or something like that, I might have been a little bit more open-minded to the idea. But as soon as I said carbon dioxide, I was kind of like, hang on, this doesn't add up. Something's not right here. Shouldn't the solution to that be plant more trees? The trees will take that carbon dioxide, turn it into a plant, and shit out more oxygen, and problem solved. But they seem to think that bulldozing it all to make solar farms and wind farms and all that, you know, oh yeah, it's madness. And I think we've well truly established that. Let's have a look at what some of the people have been saying here. So Vapu here, what about solar farms? Do you sort of look into the solar farms and address them as well? Because I know you're definitely onto the wind farm.
That's right. So when I did that road trip down the Great Dividing Range a few months ago, I visited some families that live near the the Smoky Creek wind farm, west of Rockhampton. And they're a community down there that have been fighting that solar farm for years. And Plebiscite just gave the approval the other day, a few weeks back. That's going ahead. I think that's around 9,000 acres. So 9,000 acres covered under glass. Wow. So this is the hypocrisy. So you've got massive solar farms being proposed. And now you've got the Chinese and the Japanese wanting to start new silica mines up at Cape Flattery and Cape York to develop solar for the development of solar panels.
Some of these comments are a bit old. I'm just sort of getting them all up. You focus on what you're doing. I'll stop when we need to.
So what's happening now is that we're now fighting silica mines in Cape York in really sensitive, beautiful areas, because industries after the silica to create solar panels for the transition. You know, this is how crazy it is. So now we've got to fight against mines, stop mines in really sensitive, beautiful locations, because those mines need to be done for the facilitation of renewables. But the solar farms are massive. They're absolutely massive. In the upper Calliope solar farm, I think that's around the 2,400 hectare size. It's massive. In actual fact, there's a solar farm north of here at Mount Carbine. It's called the Disraeli Solar Park. That's 2,400 hectares in size, and in acres, that's around 7,000 acres. And that's all savanna woodlands on the banks of the McLeod River, a beautiful, beautiful savanna woodland area. And that is to be cleared for a solar farm. You know, it's just complete madness. I've got to laugh because it's so stupid.
Yeah, if you didn't laugh, you'd cry. You know,
I've got to laugh.
I've neglected our poor friends on Rumble. Sorry, guys. I keep meaning to come back to you. So SD before was South Dakota. So America's watching as well, which is really cool to see. These shows are going, pretty wide. Need to stop clearing trees, says Ronan 2020. Our politicians are hypocrites. Yep, they blow up our coal-fired plants and sell coal to other countries. Yep, it is, and I think it's pretty plain for most people to see. But obviously we're like you were saying, we're dealing with that issue where people have they're afraid, and. Being a bit of a history buff in amongst it all, it's the same kind of thing we've seen in socialist Russia. It's the same kind of thing we've seen in Nazi Germany and various other places where they've implemented political structures to throw hatred at somebody who doesn't agree with them. It is very detrimental, and I guess that's where the real bravery sort of comes in. Wow, Ronan, you really do love the keyboard. Sorry, I haven't had a chance to look at this a little bit more, but I do agree with my skimming through. Yeah, so Bill Gates can fly around in his private plane and tell us to use less and hurry up and die. Actually, that reminds me of something I was going to say the other. Do you remember when we had to get rid of all our really cheap and affordable 40-cent light bulbs and start buying $10 ones because we didn't have enough power?
Yeah.
So now we're going to get electric cars and create more power drain.
Yeah.
It's like the light bulb was busting us before, but we can bring in all this other electric crap. Again, it's like you really got to think about what's happening, you know?
So the electric car issue, I've been sort of neutral on. I really don't know too much about it, but it sort of came home to roost for me the other day, where I went and picked up a friend who's got a Mitsubishi hybrid vehicle. And I know that it was off the road all last year, had issues. And I asked the owner, I said, well, is the car fixed? And she said, no, the battery's buggered. And the car's only 6 years old, and the manufacturer...
Oh, wow.
And the manufacturer says it's out of the warranty. We won't replace the battery. So for her to replace the battery in the hybrid vehicle is going to cost $12,000. And she can't afford that. So now the car is parked in the yard, useless.
Yep.
Because it's not covered under warranty. She can't afford $12,000 for a battery.
So what was the warranty on the battery? Did she say?
I'm not sure. I didn't ask, so, and if this happens at scale, you know, it's complete. That's, again, it's unsustainable. It can't be done.
Well, you just look at your mobile phone. You got the mobile phones now. You got the fixed battery. Once upon a time, you could hot swap a battery. All that battery stuff will get a new battery. The phone's still functional, you know. But now they've sealed them into the phone. You have to deal with the device until the battery's dead, and then the whole thing gone. I mean, what's sustainable about that kind of practice? And again, this is one of the things that mystifies me. You know, if we want to be more, saving the planet on a large scale, we want to reduce mining, we want to reduce waste. Would be a great place to start. We shouldn't be swapping our phone every 2 to 3 years or whatnot because they designed it to fail. And again, just like the phone, within that 3 to 4 year period, you notice that the battery doesn't hold charge as well. When you first buy it, you get it out of the box, it'll last 3-4 days, depending on how much you use it.
Right,
but within that three to 4 year lifespan, mine's reaching that point now where you're lucky to get through the day now, before that battery dies.
I think we're starting to see a slowdown in EV vehicles. I think the sales of EVs actually have really slowed down.
I found an article the other day where EV vehicles have in Australia. EV vehicles doubled in on the roads. We've doubled the amount of EV vehicles.
That's right. In Australia, they've gone up, but elsewhere they've gone down, or not. They haven't gone down. They've plateaued.
Right.
And I think we're going to see a lot of issues Teslas have only been on the road for say 4 years. I think we're going to start seeing some issues around the 8 to 10 year mark. Yeah, where batteries like your mobile phone, these lithium batteries start depleting, and they're not going to get the range out of those batteries anymore, and it's going to cost a fortune to either replace the batteries or the resale value of those vehicles will be nothing. Yep. And I think we're going to see the EV market drop out.
To me, I feel that's one of the big reasons they want to push as hard and as fast as they can, because they realize that they've invested so much money in the development of this technology. They need some sort of a return before people realize what the consequences of this are. And obviously the battery is the key component to the car. It is one of the most expensive parts of that car. So why wouldn't you just go and buy a whole new car? It's just like you would buy a whole new phone these days rather than replace the battery,
So I think we're, it blows my brain every time I think about, the electricity generation that's required to shift over to an electric vehicle fleet is mind-blowing. It's just massive. And then we're trying to charge vehicles that may not even last 10 years. And then you've got to dig up more of Mother Earth to create the minerals to buy another car. Yeah. So it's just this perpetual, it's actually increasing consumption considerably. And the thing about the Greens, if the Greens were serious, their agenda would be economic degrowth and a reduction in consumption, and things like that. But it's not. And this is why I've deviated from the Greens, is because all of their narrative now is about just renewables. Everything is about renewables, and stop fossil fuels. The thing is, if you want renewables, you need fossil fuels, and you'll always will need fossil fuels as backup, and you need fossil fuels to manufacture the renewables forever. But if they were dead set serious, they'd be talking about efficiency and recycling and things like that, and forests.
Or just manufacturing things so they last. Like when I was a kid, we had the fridge and the washing machine and all that sort of stuff, and even the vacuum cleaner. They lasted for 20 years. But there was also a repair shop, and it was actually worth repairing these things, where these days, the cost to go and get something repaired of that nature far outweighs the cost of buying something new. So, again, can you even find parts? Unless you yourself are an engineer or an electrician or some sort of a combination, how can you, economically do these things? We're all doing it tough as it is. You're going to go for the cheapest option, and if that is creating more landfill, then that's what people are going to end up doing. We're certainly seeing that over the years. The quality of our products are going down. Like I've got t-shirts. I think this one actually, in fact, is about 20 odd years old. It was made a long time ago. Where I've got shirts that I bought 5 years ago, they're in the bin.
That's it. Yeah.
Yeah. So again, that cheap Chinese shit, man. It's just I don't understand why that's not being targeted more from the Greens, and that's what, again, like yourself, I'm very disappointed in. When I think about what they were and what they've become, it's just I don't even identify it as a Greens party anymore. It's more like a cult.
Yeah, look, I tend to agree on a number of their issues. I think there's people in the Greens that are so ideologically driven that they just can't step back and look at the bigger picture and think outside. They just can't move on. Like I said earlier in the program tonight, even the gas issue, every time you see Adam Bandt, the leader of the Greens, on TV, he's anti-gas, anti-coal, anti-oil, anti-everything. Yet it's those fundamental minerals and resources that are needed for a transition. But things like gas, which is one of the better fossil fuels, I think we really do need gas. And what he could be doing is actually leading the debate on gas and saying, okay, well, let's phase out of the really bad, dirty gas like coal seam gas, but let's help our friends in East Timor, Timor-Leste, and develop the gas fields there and work in partnership with this third world nation and try to lift them out of poverty with gas. And that gas is also needed for us. So, I just think they're completely wrong on a number of issues. And they just
again, that aligns with the humanitarian concept that they, claim to be about, And, I'm a big fan of the whole idea of, I don't think we need to be grabbing refugees and bringing them over here. Why aren't we helping them get out of that turmoil? So that they can happily live where they are living, like they're escaping something because the world's gone to shit, in their little realm, why don't we help them instead of just, we'll just bring them over here and, we're just moving things around, just like carbon credits. We're grabbing this from here and moving it to there. Nothing's changing. We're just moving shit around for the sake of changing it, It's
Look,
like, those little slidey puzzles you used to get, and you slowly move them around till you get to make the picture. It's like they're not even trying to make the picture. They're just moving the tiles around,
Yeah, so look, I'm totally okay with a humanitarian intake of refugees. I've got nothing against that. And the intake is minuscule, but compared to the 700,000 people that are coming in, who are basically wealthy individuals, coming in and then squeezing out our first home buyers and placing a lot of pressure on our services such as hospitals and police and so forth. So I just find that, and then you've got the federal government complaining about inflation. The worst thing you can do with inflation is have 700,000 people come in and pump all this cash into the system, which just raises inflation. So
Agreed.
it's completely hypocritical. I don't understand why they're doing this. And if climate change is such an issue and we need to decarbonise, yet we're bringing in mostly wealthy people from some countries like Sweden and Norway that have very high carbon-free energy generation, such as nuclear and hydro, coming into Australia and then going into our coal-fired power system and increasing our emissions. Just from that climate change perspective, if that's the issue, well then how can we address climate change when we're just going to increase emissions with an unsustainable intake of people? The population of Cairns is 100,000 people, so we're increasing the size of the city of Cairns 7 times in 2 years.
Yeah,
it's just insane.
Yeah. And that means more wind power and more solar power to run these things too. Like, I mean, it is. It's just a big, long string can of worms sort of thing. But I think we might have to wrap this up because we've been at this for an hour and 40 minutes. Man, time flies.
Yeah, it's gone fast. Yeah.
Yeah. But look, thanks heaps for coming on, man. Let's just quickly wrap it up. How can people sort of get in contact with you if they want to help you out, man?
Yeah, so I'm a member of Rainforest Reserves Australia. And if you just do a Google search on that, Rainforest Reserves Australia, and they've got a website. So you're able to donate. We're a charity, a tax-deductible charity. You can donate. And that keeps us all going in terms of generating the mapping, doing video, travel expenses to do forums, town hall meetings and things like that.
Just punch that into the chat.
Yeah, so Rainforest Reserves Australia. And we're a conservation group where we're the only conservation group, I believe, in Australia that have seen through the lies of the renewable energy industry, and we can call it out. And the reason why we can do that is because we're independent. We don't have any funding coming through from state governments or that's the website. We don't source any funding from any other party except donors like yourself. Whereas a lot of the regional conservation groups, the Australian Conservation Foundation, the Queensland Conservation Foundation, all the conservation groups get some or most of their funding from government grants, and they toe the party line, and that's been a big issue as well.
Are you finding that you're getting a bit of resistance in that regard because, those people you would normally go to are, so heavily towing the line that they don't want to get involved?
I've had a few emails from activists within those organisations saying, keep up the great work, keep going. But for, like you discussed, we've had a big discussion on this, they just can't seem to break out of the mould and come out publicly and go, hey, Steve, you're doing a great job. They do it privately, but not publicly.
Yeah.
So
we really need some big, strong, courageous people to start waking up and like you said, like, you're not getting ridiculed. If anything, people are quietly patting you on the back. And when enough people step up, those people won't hope, those who are a little bit more on the cowardly side might, go down to the land of Oz and see the old wizard and find courage.
Yeah, that's right. So I think it just needs a few of us to stand up, and then I think we'll get others standing up behind us as time goes on, when they start seeing when this renewable transition starts really making headway. I think we're going to see a lot more people going, holy shit, this is astronomical, this is unsustainable, and they'll start standing up. But we don't. Yeah, we want to try to stop it now before a lot of these wind farms actually start construction.
Definitely. Yeah, well, we got to stop this stuff good, strong, and proper. So on the website here, I'm guessing there's like a sort of a petitions page that people can sort of jump in. If we have a look at this, I'll bring it back up again.
Yeah,
we have a look at our webpage.
Well, there is a new petition. I'll get a petition on that page. There's actually one that's just been launched by the National Energy Realist Network in Australia, and they've just started up a federal petition about 2 days ago. I don't think that's on the website. I'll get that up on the website.
Yeah, cool. And when people are looking for it, where will they find it? Under news and events, perhaps?
We'll get it up on the homepage. So I'll get that up on the homepage.
On the homepage.
So it's the first thing you see. I'll get that up hopefully tonight. Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. So there's obviously lots more information. Well, there's a petition here already.
Oh, that's it there. That's it there. Okay,
yeah, that's it. Okay, so it's already up. Beautiful.
Anna's put that up there. Great. Okay.
Awesome. So there's a petition you guys can get onto. I don't know how much petitions sort of really go. Have you sort of found yourself, speaking of strange bedfellows, talking to say like Senator Malcolm Roberts and Senator Rennick and things like that?
That's right. Senator. Yeah, it was amazing. Senator Rennick came up and I spent a day with him at the Caban, or actually at the Shulumban wind farm site, and. I'd really, before that point, knew nothing about him. And I met him. I was in the car with him for a day, and he was amazing. A great supporter, and has looked into this. You look into the data, and he knows it's delusional. It's a scam.
He's doing a lot of great work.
Yeah, and then look, I've been doing a lot of work with federal members in the LNP party. And like I said, they're inviting me to Parliament House on the 5th of February next year to do a 1-hour presentation to federal politicians.
Yeah, wow.
And I think that's what needs to happen. We just need to show more people. We need to show people the visual images of what's involved, because people just don't understand how big these turbines are. And how useless they are. I show the data. I've got all the graph data for the Mount Emerald wind farm that show that for the year 2022, it only ran at 18.1% capacity factor. So that video you just saw of that mountainside being blown away and the explosions, that was Mount Emerald wind farm, and that only runs at 18%. It's not meaningful electricity. It's rubbish. Yeah.
Yeah, all that destruction for nothing.
Yeah.
Anyway. Is there anything else you want to quickly share with us, my friend, before we move along? Because
I think that's about it. Yeah.
Awesome.
It's been a great conversation. I've really enjoyed it, and thanks. It's been great.
No, awesome. Thank you very much for coming on. Welcome to pop in anytime you got some sort of a development you want to get out there and share things. If there's another urgent call to action, and we need everybody to start hammering the local politicians and whatnot to make them aware that the people are waking up, and we have had enough of this bullshit, And I definitely want to sort of really hone in on the idea that it doesn't matter whether you're coming at things from a left point of view or a right point of view or whatever. If you're focused in on doing the right thing for the right reasons and accepting facts for facts, we can all really come together then, instead of getting caught up in bullshit ideology.
That's right. Yes. Yeah. You just got to just look at the facts and not be scared to just follow your heart down the right path. And like I said, I've been involved in many environmental campaigns. And when I look back, I've always been on the right side of history. And I know on this campaign, we'll be on the right side of history. And that's why I do it. And we fight because you want to be able to say to future generations, well, I did everything I could at the time. And I want to be able to say that to my kids. I did everything I could at the time to expose this scam. And I'm sorry that so much land has been cleared and destroyed in this scam. But at the time, I tried to do what I had to do. I did as much as I could at the time. So,
and you can see from the comments that people agree. You're a true greenie, mate, not one of them fake ass ones, says
Rightio.
Jason. You know,
yeah. Anyway,
I'm not sure behind the green mask. I think we kind of are behind the green mask. I haven't actually watched that one. I might go suss that out
Rosie
myself.
Corey. I'll suss it out. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll have a look, see what's in there. Thank you, Steve and Batty, for this valuable info. Anytime, Lucy. Side note, so-called Australian freedom politicians have said about going down in New Zealand. Actually, no, we've actually been talking a lot about it on this channel, about the stuff, what's going on in New Zealand with the, what are they calling it, a data breach? But it was actually, you know, them showing the data for what happened with something I'm not going to mention while I'm on YouTube, but I'll discuss that a little bit further on Sunday when we go for fail of the week. I haven't decided on an exact time yet. I'm still trying to manage my weekend and stuff, but it will be an afternoon session, probably somewhere about that 4 o'clock. If you want to come and read the news with me, we'll go through and decide who's the biggest fail. I'm personally sort of leaning towards New Zealand myself there, Michael. Does Stephen know that what the world's current CO2 level is?
No. Well, I've got no idea, but what I do know is that we emit 1.3% of the world's carbon emissions.
Yeah.
So basically, even if we were to stop emissions today, there'd be really no impact on emissions globally. Yeah.
There was a very interesting video that Mark James shared with me. It was unfortunately like half an hour long and was just going to chew into too much time. And sadly, I didn't get time to go through it. But let's see. I did have it tucked away here. And I will just pop it over here for a second. Paste and go. So if anybody wants to have a look at this one in their own time, I recommend you have a look at it. I got about maybe 5 or 10 minutes in and I was just running out of time and I'm thinking I'm never going to get this going. But this is the video that Mark James sent to me during the week. And again, you know, I think we covered a lot of the topics that I seen in that brief interaction that I had, where Alan Jones points out a lot of those sort of facts, where I think he was saying 0.03% of carbon is what we're looking at in the atmosphere, you know. And like I was saying earlier, nitrogen is like a big component of about 70-odd%. You know, like the oxygen we breathe is only about maybe somewhere between 12 and 15%. What you're breathing right now is actually oxygen. Majority of it is nitrogen. So when we're talking about 0.03% is actually the carbon dioxide, and then, you know, we're contributing like 1% of 0.03. Like, yeah, okay. How much effect are we having? And like I said, I think there's a lot of other elements involved in these things that are not being looked at, and that's where our science is failing us. It's not encompassing it. And you know, one quick one before we go, I was down at the university, and they were talking about how climate change was killing the reef. And I was while the rest of the reporters were just going, oh, how frustrating is it that, you know, that people don't believe you, and they at no point do they ask what science have you produced to go along with that. He's just speaking a narrative. There was no actual fact in there. I turned around and said, so just out of curiosity, what effect did the Fukushima disaster have on, you know, the reef? Like here we are 10 years later, radiation still pumping out of that into the ocean. Has that had any effect on the reef? And Mr. No, it's all climate change killing the reef couldn't answer that question because he didn't know. And to me, I was straight away, well, isn't that interesting? Shouldn't you analyze all factions of, you know, what's happening rather than just go, oh, it's climate change because that's the popular thing? Like, is there something else going on here? And that's the big question. You know, I'm not saying climate change isn't happening. Like, from what I'm understanding, it's observable throughout the whole solar system. There's something else going on here, and I don't think it's just this little carbon thing. There's a bigger picture to play. Although I agree, we have had a horrific impact on the environment. We're bashing koala skulls in, for example. We're not doing good things. You know, I don't think that's, you know, to you know, up for to debate in that regard. I'm happy to admit that that here in Australia and across the world, we're doing horrible things. We're dropping bombs like they're going out of fashion. You know, we're killing each other left, right, and center over God knows what this week. You know, we've got a new war starting. Did anybody get the carbon footprint of what's happening in Israel and Palestine, for example? Like, I mean, what's the carbon footprint of that? You know, there's so many factors and elements that they just don't look at. But we'll have to leave it there, and we might discuss, you know, all these other random elements and things to, you know, in a later video where we get a little bit more in depth into all the things that aren't being talked about. But thank you very much for coming on, man.
Right,
it's been really, really good.
Thanks, Matt.
And yeah, good luck in your future endeavors. And hey, if you need help, you know, getting the voice out, please contact us.
Okay, thank you.
And for everybody else out there, thank you very much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed it. Of course, we do the usual little bit at the end, you know, where we go through and there's the GoFundMe, you know, if you want to help out the Indigenous video, I want to get started because, you know, those guys are very concerned about the environment themselves, you know, they want to preserve their own home. You know, what a crazy thought. You know, there's the link tree for all the bits and pieces you might need to find out. And of course, Patreon. And oh my God, I forgot to grab the dude's name. We had a number 5 pop in. Johnny 5 is alive. And no, I didn't write his name down. Sorry, mate. I'll get to you on Sunday when I'm a little bit more prepared. But we have a 5th subscriber. Thank you very much. I'm going to call you Johnny 5 for now because he was number 5. It's really good to be supporting it. Now the Patreon account is actually funding the cost of this program. So because it cost me $45 a month to have this software functional, and those 5 members are now paying for that software. So thank you very much. It's a little bit more sustainable. Let's use that you know, phrase as much as we can. Anybody who's got a story and wants to share something, please contact me via that email address on your screen. It's also, the links are in the description. Thanks very much, Stephen. It's been an awesome show. As usual, gone way over time, but hey,
great.
Good times.
Okay. See you all. Thank you,
mate.
Thank you. See ya. Bye-bye. See ya.